Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ivan Hunt. I am the owner of IFH Synergized Solutions. I am a relationship coach. I am a personal development coach. I am a public communicator. I This is part two of the video on intimacy and how it pertains to men, but it's really something that's used both for men and women at any type of relationship. It doesn't matter the sexuality, it doesn't matter the gender. Um, the concepts are the same. They apply to everybody. Feelings are feelings, people are people at the end of the day, and love is love. Um, so in the first part of the video, part one, I kind of touched bases where and said, okay, there's two parts to intimacy. The first part is yourself and working on yourself. And the second part, which is this video, is about the relationship. So to kind of recap the first part, the first video, you have to allow yourself to forgive yourself when you're working on yourself. You have to learn how to like and love yourself, and you have to learn how to be vulnerable with yourself and realize that we're not perfect, and we all need to work and strive to be better than what we were, and to improve our relationships, and and learn how to become friends with ourselves and to be vulnerable to ourselves, and that will kind of allow you to be prepared for the next phase. And this is what part two of this two-part video is about. How do you build intimacy with your significant other? I believe that going from phase one or to phase two, or working on yourself to moving into building the intimacy between you and your significant other, is you have to go through this process, and you have to allow the process to work. And a lot of that process is healing, because there's obviously been things that had happened that now all of a sudden you find yourselves in this situation. So you have to learn how to, again, you always got to learn how to forgive. So you have to let that first process work, and allow it and trust it that it's going to bring you to the other side. Now, when building intimacy with you and your significant other, it begins with friendship. Actually, I asked my wife the other day, I said, baby, what is it, intimacy means to you? And she said friendship. And that was her first response. And you'll hear me use my relationship and my experiences in life to try to communicate the message to you. So my wife and I, we've always been very good friends. We started out as friends. Our relationship is based off of friendship. And you may have heard in the previous video, there's a saying I have: friends forgive, lovers don't. And when she and I started to really get serious about each other, and we really started having feelings stronger than just friendship, and love was starting to blossom, our relationship changed. Now we became a little bit more aware of our feelings. We became a little bit more guarded because we were scared that we were going to get hurt, and our defenses went up. And so naturally we kind of drew apart, and grew apart. And it was tough for both of us, because what had been such a rewarding relationship, which was our friendship and our ability to just sit there and talk for hours and hours, all of a sudden was strained. Now we couldn't talk. We would go out and we would just kind of look at each other. We were scared to talk. We were scared to let our guards down. We were scared to be vulnerable to each other, because we both knew we were at a situation and at a place now where we could actually hurt the other person. And I think prior to that, when you're kind of at that friendship phase, your feelings you're still guarding your feelings, and it's still a little bit harder for you to get your feelings hurt. But once love kind of intervenes, now things change, and you become more susceptible of getting your feelings hurt. And that's a hard thing for both men and women to accept and to get over. The biggest part of allowing love to flow through, and to kind of knock down those guards and those walls that we've built up, is learning the other person's love language. This way, once love gets involved, your communication and the language in which you used to speak when you were just friends changes now. See, the love language is different than the friendship language. So you can look it up. You know, there's 4 or 5 different love languages or languages of love, and each person has one of those languages. They're receptive of that particular language, and it speaks directly to their heart. And a lot of times, what really happens in relationships and where intimacy really gets lost is they don't know how to communicate with the other in a language in which they understand. So that means that you have to be humble and humble yourself and realize, okay, I've got to learn this other person in this new setting. You know, I knew this person. You know, I knew my wife as my friend, but I didn't know my wife as my wife and my lover. Our languages was very, very, very different. Um, I was the type that I expressed my love through saying, hey, you know, I'm going to be here. You know, I was very chronological in my movements. I make sure, you know, if I left work at this time, I'll be home at that time. You know, it was kind of my way of a check and balance, and that was my way of showing her that, hey, I love you. But in her mind, you know, she needed affection, public affection, intimate, you know, just touching, holding hands, hugs. And that was very uncomfortable for me. You know, I didn't like holding hands. You know, I didn't like hugging and kissing in public and stuff like that. And, you know, I know the reasons why. You know, a lot of that had to do with the way I grew up and where I grew up. And so it was very hard for me to start showing her that type of affection. And I also learned that my language of love and how I receive love and it's through words of affirmation. You know, I remember when she and I first got together, you know, she would just, you know, at that time I was single, I didn't have family here. I was fighting for my kids. You know, it was a rough spot, and I was lonely, you know, to begin with. And she would always pump me up, you know, she'd always build me up. And that was very new to me. You know, I'd always been in relationships where we were constantly trying to tear each other down. We were constantly competing against each other and trying to one up each other. And, you know, and as husband and wives, or as, you know, whatever your relationship status is, you know, it shouldn't be a competition. If anything, you two should be together competing against yourselves, and try to build and grow yourself. So we went through a really rough period, and we had to step back and identify, we had to recommit to ourselves. You know, we really had to make a strong commitment to our marriage, that somehow, some way, we were going to figure this thing out. And part of figuring it out was learning her love language and me making certain attempts to move outside of my comfort zone. You know, if holding hands in public and kissing in public is, you know, something that makes me uncomfortable, then, you know, but that reassures her, then so be it. You know, that's something I would have to work on. That's something I did work on. You know, quality time is a language that we both share with each other. You know, so once we understood that we really enjoy spending time with each other, and, you know, we like going to sports events. We'll go to the basketball games. We'll go to the football games. Anything dealing with sports, we enjoy. So that's always been our common denominator, and that helps us. And so we had a starting point. And say, okay, we both like spending time with each other. What are the other things that we can learn from each other to make our relationship grow? And you know, it was as we started to learn our love language with each other, and it's trial and error. You know, the guards slowly start coming down, because now you start speaking to each other directly to their hearts, and you've removed your mind a little bit, and you've lowered your guards, and you're more receptive. And the hard part I think for men particularly is to allow themselves to feel love. And I think women struggle with this also, especially women who have been hurt, you know, really bad, and, you know, been in abusive relationships, or, You know, the person they've been with commits a lot of infidelity, and the same goes for men too. You know, there's women out there doing the same thing. You know, so I'm keep it even, and so it's hard for us to allow ourselves to love again and to feel love, and it maybe that even that kind of goes hand in hand to allow yourself to feel love while learning the other person's love language at the same time. And I think the biggest thing that really builds intimacy in a relationship is laughter. You know, if you can learn to laugh with your significant other, there's just something about it that changes things. You know, you come up with your own little jokes. It's your little inside jokes. You'll get so close to each other through laughter. Because a lot of times truth is spoken in jest too. So, there may be certain things on your mind, and you don't want to make a bigger deal out of it, so you may make a joke out of it and break the ice that way. So spending time, I know, is a language of love for her and myself. I know she likes physical touch. That's very important to her. I like words of affirmation. And we're best friends, and we share things with each other. We tell how we feel. We tell some of our deepest secrets. We allow ourselves to see the very worst of each other and build it from there. So intimacy is something that you have to first learn how to have with yourself. You have to learn how to be intimate with yourself and vulnerable with yourself. And you have to learn how to forgive yourself and love yourself. And then once you've kind of gotten to that stage, the next phase is, building that intimacy again, or for the first time, with your significant other. And that starts by building a friendship with each other. And then as love starts to grow and blossom, you have to start learning what the other person's love languages is or are really, and because they're going to change. But you have to learn how to communicate with each other that way. And it's really not something that should be considered labor or hard work or anything like that. It should be something that should be exciting, because what you're doing is you're starting to dig for treasure within that other person. And that's kind of a cool process, man, when you really think about it. And as you start finding those little treasures with each other, allow yourself to feel it. Allow yourself to feel those emotions. Allow yourself to feel love. Allow yourself to be cared for. Allow yourself to want something, to let somebody miss you. Sometimes it's very hard for us to receive love. It's always easier to give it, but it's very hard to receive love. And when both people can accept love from the other, that really makes your relationship really strong. And you could do that by, here's one of the things I did was I started listening to love songs. Okay, it sounds kind of cheesy, but I grew up in the hip hop era. That's what I always liked. That was the music of my choice. But it's a hard music to listen to when you're trying to rebuild a relationship or you're trying to create intimacy. You have to put love in your heart. So one of the things I did was I started listening to love songs. I started listening to jazz, to kind of slow my mind down. I would go back and listen to the old R&Bs and from 60s, 70s, from the 80s, and really listen to the words and just let the song play. And slowly but surely, it started allowing me to understand what love again was, and to allow me to start feeling love. And the more that I started to feel love, the more I was able to start giving love. And the more I was able to start giving love, I started understanding what love is, and it made it easier for me to receive the love from her. And and then from there, just continue to laugh. Always laugh. Always try to find a way to laugh. If you like, comedy movies, then watch one. Once a week. Spend time with each other. Go out to dinner together. Go for a walk together. Just go to the park together. You have to. You will want to be with that person, and allow each other to also have their space, you know, and that builds intimacy too, because that requires trust. Um, so it's really a beautiful thing once you get to it, and you allow yourself to receive love, give love, understand how to communicate that love, learn how to be best friends, and laugh. And that's how you build intimacy in a relationship. I love y'all. Always remember, keep your head up, your shoulders back. Ain't nothing on the ground but a frown. Peace. And I love y'all.